Hello and welcome to Byju's IAS. Let's take up the daily quiz for today. The first question: which of the following statements are correct? The National Population Register is a register of the citizens of the country. Under NPR, the demographic details are captured. The database is maintained by the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation. Amongst the given statements, the first and the third statements are incorrect, so option B would be the right answer. See, the NPR exercise is conducted by the Registrar General and Census Commissioner of India under the Ministry of Home Affairs. This exercise is taken up along with the decadal census, and it creates a register or a database of the usual residents of the country and not just the citizens of the country. According to the Citizenship Rules of 2003, a usual resident is defined as any individual residing in a local area for the last 6 months or for the coming 6 months. So this includes both citizens and as well as foreigners. So this clearly makes the first and the third statements incorrect. But the second statement is correct because under NPR, the demographic details of the usual residents is captured. The first such NPR was carried out in 2010 and the list was again updated in 2015. Now the NPR is being conducted again for 2020-2021 as a part of the 2021 census. See, in a census, the population of the country is enumerated and several important socio-economic indicators are captured. For example, the literacy rate, the type of housing, the number of vehicles owned, etc. All such details are collected in a census. Whereas in a NPR, the demographic details of the usual residents are captured, which includes personal details to help identify the usual resident. These parameters include place of birth, date of birth, parents, the place of residence, and the number of ID cards such as Aadhaar, PAN card, etc. This question has been asked because we have a related article in today's The Hindu newspaper, according to which the center is likely to allow the usual residents to fill out their NPR details online. Now let's take up the next question. The Aravalli mountain range passes through which of the following regions? Delhi, Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand, Haryana, Rajasthan, or Gujarat? The correct answer would be option D. The Aravalli mountain range does not pass through Himachal Pradesh and Uttarakhand, but it can be found in Delhi, Haryana, Rajasthan, and Gujarat. So option D is the right answer. This question has been asked because according to this article in The Hindu, environmental activists and residents have opposed the legalization of mining in the Aravalli ranges. See, the Aravalli mountain range is found in the northwest part of India and it runs in a northeast southwest direction. It can be found in parts of Delhi, Haryana, Rajasthan, and Gujarat. The Aravalli Ranges is considered to be a key habitat for several birds and animals, and several protected areas can also be found within the Aravalli Ranges. And Mount Guru Shikhar is the highest peak on the Aravalli Range. Now let's take up the third question. Which of the following statements are correct? The Udan scheme or Ude Desh Ka Aam Nagrik is a flagship scheme of the Ministry of Civil Aviation envisaged to make air travel affordable and widespread in the country. The scheme intends to boost inclusive national economic growth, employment opportunities, and air transport infrastructure development across the nation. Under the scheme, new routes, airports, heliports, and water aerodromes under the Sagarmala seaplane services have been operationalized. All the three statements are correct. Option D is the right answer. This question has been asked because according to this press release from the Ministry of Civil Aviation, several new routes are being opened up under the Udan scheme, including under the Sagarmala seaplane services as a part of the celebrations of India's 75th year of independence. Now let's take up the fourth question. Which of the following rights are recognized by the Forest Rights Act of 2006? Title rights, use rights, relief and development rights, forest management rights. All the four are correct, so option D is the right answer. This question has been asked because according to this press release from the President's Secretariat, the President has stated how important the forest dwellers are as far as the nation's development is concerned, and he has highlighted the rights of the forest dwelling communities. So, in this context, let's talk about the Forest Rights Act in greater detail as a part of our discussion under the fact of the day. See, the Forest Rights Act, or also known as the Scheduled Tribes and Other Traditional Forest Dwellers Act of 2006, recognizes the rights of the forest dwelling tribal communities and other traditional forest dwellers to access and exploit the forest resources. See, since centuries, the forest dwelling communities and the traditional forest dwellers, they have shared a symbiotic relationship with the environment, that is, with their forests. And these forest dwelling tribes, they are not only dependent on the forest resources for their livelihood, but they have also played a key role in their conservation since centuries. Because the exploitation of forest resources by the tribal communities is always done in a sustainable manner and it doesn't deplete or damage the environment. And since the forest dwelling tribes are heavily dependent on the forest for their livelihood, they recognize the importance and they not only worship the forest resources, but they also actively take part in its conservation and protection. But unfortunately, the forest management policies and the environmental laws in India, both in colonial India and as well as in post independent India, did not recognize this connection. The various policies, laws, and rules related to forest management and protection of environment did not recognize the symbiotic relationship between the tribal communities and their forests. For centuries, the forests have not only been their native homeland, but it has also provided for their sustenance and livelihood. And in return, these tribal communities and forest dwellers, they have protected their environment and forests. Then upon this, the misguided policies of the British and as well as that of the post-independent governments has led to the oppression of the forest dwelling communities and as well as to their social exclusion. So one of the key objectives of this act is to undo the historical injustice that has occurred to the forest dwelling communities because their traditional rights had been snatched away by the state because of flawed policies. So the Forest Rights Act tries to undo the historical injustice and it even tries to ensure land tenure, livelihood, and food security of the forest dwelling scheduled tribes and other traditional forest dwellers. It also provides them a direct role in the conservation of India's forests and gives them the authority and the responsibility to promote the sustainable usage of forest resources and to play a critical role in the conservation and maintenance of biodiversity. So, as a result, the Act recognizes individual rights such as rights of self cultivation and habitation. It also recognizes a set of community rights such as the right to grazing, fishing, access to water bodies in forests, and as well as habitat rights for the particularly vulnerable tribal groups, and access to traditional seasonal resources for the nomadic and pastoral communities. It not only enables their access to biodiversity resources, but it also recognizes the community right to intellectual property and traditional knowledge. It gives recognition to traditional customary rights and the right to protect, regenerate, conserve, or manage any community forest resources for the sustainable exploitation. It also provides for the rights to allocate forest land for developmental purposes, especially to set up basic infrastructure to meet the needs of the local community. It also contains provisions to protect the tribal community from eviction and provides for their rehabilitation and settlement in such cases. Then the Forest Rights Act provides for true decentralization by recognizing the Gram Sabha as the grassroots authority to decide upon the allocation and usage of forest resources and for the enforcement of the Forest Rights Act. Under this act, the Gram Sabha functions as a highly empowered body and it enables the local tribal community to have the key decision making powers with regard to local policies and schemes. Apart from protecting their traditional rights and their access to forest resources, it also tries to prevent their unlawful evictions and even contains provisions for their basic development that is designed to meet their needs for education, healthcare, nutrition, basic infrastructure, etc. So, in order to realize these objectives, the Forest Rights Act recognizes four types of rights. This includes title rights, under which the forest dwelling tribal communities and other traditional forest dwellers are given the right to ownership to land that is farmed by the tribals or forest dwellers. Next, it provides for usage rights under which the traditional forest dwellers and the tribal communities are given the rights to extract forest resources such as minor forest produce, access to grazing areas and pastoral areas, etc. They also enjoy relief and development rights under which the Gram Sabha and the local communities are provided protection against any eviction, and if their eviction or forced displacement is needed for the sake of infrastructure creation, then they will have to be rehabilitated with adequate support being provided by the state. Then finally, it also recognizes forest management rights. Under this right, the traditional forest dwelling communities and the scheduled tribes, they enjoy the right to protect, regenerate, conserve and manage the forest resources in order to protect and conserve the biodiversity and the ecosystems. Now finally, let's take up a practice question from the 2019 prelims paper. With reference to the Legislative Assembly of a state in India, consider the following statements. The governor makes a customary address to members of the House at the commencement of the first session of the year. When a state legislature does not have a rule on a particular matter, it follows the Lok Sabha rule on that matter. Amongst the given statements, the second statement is incorrect, so option A is the right answer. See, according to Article 176 of the Constitution, the governor of the state makes a customary address to the state legislature at the beginning of the first session of every year and as well as after each general election. Then under Article 208, state legislatures have been empowered to make the rules to conduct the business of the House. But if on any particular matter there are no stated rules, then the state legislature itself will have to come out with a set of rules, and they don't necessarily follow the rules that have been laid out by the Lok Sabha on that particular matter. So this makes the second statement incorrect, and hence option A is the right answer. So this concludes the discussion for today. Thanks for watching.